following is a production of Cary TV, the Town of Cary's government access channel.
Call to order the April 7th meeting of the Cary Town Council. This past Saturday, Cary lost a saint, Howard Manning. Howard Manning served as the executive director of Dorcas Ministries for the past 17 years. He was very active in our community and was a regular smiling face at many community events. Like many of us, I'm blessed to have known Howard, not only for his gentle demeanor and his warm smile and his kind heart, but as someone who genuinely cared for others. He touched so many lives. He lived his faith each and every day with his words and his actions. He ministered to those in need. He made sure the least of us had food, had clothing, had a place to live. And if you lost your way, he'd help you find it. One of his unrecognized gifts was that he showed all of us the meaning of caring and loving one another. So in a way, he ministered to all of us. Howard Manning's life was a life well lived, and we were so very blessed that he shared his love with us. Heaven has a new angel, Howard Manning. Rest in peace, Howard. And now I'll recognize Yalu for our ceremonial opening.
Thank you, Mayor. Please join me for Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business is to adopt the agenda. We have an item change on it. Unfortunately, Insurance Commissioner Causey had an unexpected conflict and will be unable to join us at tonight's meeting. So we'll remove the presentation from him from our agenda. So is there a motion to adopt the amended agenda?
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We now move to presentations and recognitions, and the first one is the appointments to the Human Relations, Inclusion, and Diversity Task Force. And to begin with, I want to thank all of those who applied, and especially want to thank Laurie Bush for initiating, supporting, and leading our efforts in creating this task force. And I'm going to take a moment here to read the names of the appointed people on this task force. This group of individuals will be appointed for a 2-year term or until the final findings from the Reimagining Policing Project is presented to Council, whichever is later. On this task force, we have Susie Silver, Suchi Gupta, Dev Herji, Jessica McDonald, Ashish Prajupati, Ness Shortley, Paula Smith, and our alternate, Donna Davis. Congratulations to those who have been appointed to this task force, and we're so very looking forward to what comes up from this group. And the council liaison will be Ya Lu for this task force. All right, now I'll turn it over to our town manager for the town manager update.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I hope the community will join us this Saturday at 5 p.m. as we break ground on our expansion of the USA Baseball National Training Complex. I also understand that Ginny has arranged a few surprises for us. After the ceremony, we invite those in attendance to enjoy the championship game for the National High School Invitational that's immediately following. I also want to share the good news of more progress being made on the Lee and Associates building at the corner of Walnut Street and Kildare Farm Road. Construction has reached a point where they need us to close one lane of Walnut Street beside their development for about a month. The open lane of Walnut will be one way leaving downtown. Drivers coming into downtown will be detoured to Maynard Road or Byram Street and then to Kildare Farm Road to get downtown. The temporary traffic pattern begins on Monday, April 18th, and should return to normal by the middle of next month. Electronic message boards announcing the detour are in place, and we can expect to see additional reminders next week in preparation for the April 18th change. That concludes my report, Mayor.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
We now move to Public Speaks Out. We've included instructions for speaking at this forum on the printed and on the online agenda. There were 3 opportunities to participate in Public Speaks Out through written comments, calling in, or attending here in person. If you are here in person and would like to speak, I would ask that you take a seat in the rows to my right that are shown as reserved. Public Speaks Out speakers have 3 minutes each for their comments. There is a timer on the podium, and it starts off with a green light. When it turns yellow, that means you have 30 seconds remaining. And when it turns to a flashing red, at that point I will interrupt you, not trying to be rude, not trying to be mean, but trying to be fair to all of our speakers. I thank everyone in the audience for understanding that this is a business meeting. Please do not applaud, make remarks from your seat, or anything else that may distract from this meeting. So now is the time for Public Speaks Out, and I'll call on the clerk to summarize any written comments and any call-in speakers.
No written comments. We did have 1 speaker registered to speak and no call-in speakers. And so our first registered speaker is Mary Abrams.
Good evening. Thank you for your time this evening. I'm Mary Abrams. I live in the Upchurch Farms neighborhood in Cary, and I'm the president of the Wake Audubon Society. The Wake Audubon Society is a conservation nonprofit dedicated to protecting birds and the places they and we need today and in the future. We encourage environmental stewardship, we connect people to nature, we advocate for equitable conservation policies, and we conserve and protect native habitats. So we appreciate that the Town Council approved new landscaping standards earlier this year that prioritize native plants and prohibit invasive species. And in honor of Arbor Day last month, we circulated a thank you petition to our members, supporters, and attendees at the Cary Arbor Day celebration. And tonight I would like to present that petition, signed by 174 residents, neighbors, and friends of the town of Cary and Wake Audubon. But before I do that, I do want to take a moment to recognize the hard work of the town staff, particularly Katie Rose Levin, Dana Widmar, and the planning staff who made this happen. We also know that there are many more people who are involved in getting this work done, and we're grateful for their efforts as well. We also appreciate that groups like ours were given the opportunity to participate. So, with that said, I will read the petition. As a bird lover and Wake Audubon supporter, I know how important native plants are to birds and people. They provide essential food and habitat to birds and other wildlife, reduce flooding, and help keep our air clean and cool. So, as Cary celebrates Arbor Day, I thank you for approving the updated Cary Appearance Manual and Land Development Ordinance that prohibit invasive species and recommend primarily native species for landscaping requirements. As we enter the spring and summer breeding seasons, native oaks, maples, and river birches will host the caterpillars that birds feed their young. This fall, burgeoning serviceberries and American persimmons will fuel migratory birds as they return to their winter homes, and native red cedar trees and American hollies will shelter and sustain our local common birds through the winter. I appreciate that these examples are all recommended to developers by the town of Cary, and I'm proud to live in a town that values an environment where birds and people may thrive. Thank you for all you do in service to our community.
Thank you. Other speakers that have signed up?
No additional registered speakers.
Are there, please?
My name is George McDowell, and may it please your honor, esteemed members of council, Mr. Stiegel, Ms. Glover, and Ms. Johnson. At the Cary School of Government in 2017, a lecturer stated that it was Cary's intention to build out 100% of its developable land. I laughed, thinking it was a joke, but I laughed alone because it was no joke. I could have asked 1,000 questions about the wisdom of this policy. The first thing that came to mind was, what happens to Cary's wildlife? And the answer, burned into my brain, verbatim, they will have to move to Chatham County. In 2020, human activity added 40 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide to our atmosphere. Because of the COVID pandemic lockdown, this number is slightly below the amount predicted by the exponentially increasing upward curve. In 2020, COVID or no, humans chopped down, bulldozed, or otherwise killed 15 billion trees around the world. Cary's average tree loss over the last decade is 440 acres per year. This works out to about 1.2 acres per day. Cary adds 10 people per day to its population. Cary car ownership averages 790 cars per 1,000 people. Thus, Cary adds about 7 or 8 cars per day, every day, to our roadways, while cutting a little more than an acre of those beautiful machines that are primary air filtration and air cooling systems that we have every single day. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres last week described humanity's effort to keep our planet's temperature rise below 1.5 degrees Celsius as, quote, on life support and in intensive care. Senor Guterres said we are sleepwalking our way to climate catastrophe. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public speaks out before we go to public hearings? Seeing no one, I'll close public speaks out and we'll move to the consent agenda. For the benefit of people watching our meeting on TV, I'm going to take a minute or two to review our consent agenda items. Please keep in mind that one vote approves all of these items. On the consent agenda, we have minutes, sublease agreements at Wakemed Soccer Park with Carolina FC and NCW FC, Winding Pine Pump Station bid award, resolution authorizing condemnation WT 1278. Would council members like any of these items pulled from the consent agenda for discussion? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second?
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And that takes us to public hearings. Same rules apply for public hearings that applied for public speaks out, with one exception. Speakers now have 5 minutes each for their comments. Our first public hearing is 21A15, the Hogan annexation. Planning Manager Katie Dry will introduce the item. Council will not take action on this item tonight, but it will return to council at a future date for action. Ms. Dry.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is an owner-initiated annexation request for 7.02 acres at 109 Appaloosa Trail within Chatham County. The site is contiguous to Cary's corporate limits. There is an associated rezoning application with this annexation request. The rezoning is for R40 conditional use, and the public hearing for the rezoning was held at your last council meeting in March. The applicant is requesting to build one detached dwelling and to connect to Cary utilities. Approval of the annexation will be required before Cary staff can issue a building permit for the site. Per the Cary-Chatham Joint Land Use Plan and the interlocal agreement associated with that plan, public hearing notice for this annexation and the rezoning have been sent to Chatham County. Following the public hearing tonight, action will be deferred to a future date so that the annexation and the rezoning can come back for final action at the same meeting. So this concludes staff's presentation, and following the public hearing, I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dry. Now it's time for the public hearing on 21A15. I'll call on the clerk to summarize any written comments and call on any call-in speakers.
No written comments and no call-in speakers.
All right, very good. So I'll open the floor to those who are attending who would like to speak on this public hearing for this annexation. Any speakers for this annexation? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing, and this will go to our Planning and Zoning Board for their review.
For this annexation,
Yeah, that doesn't-
it will just be deferred.
It just follows the rezoning.
That's correct.
That's
We'll bring
right.
it back with the rezoning.
Yep, sorry about that. So it will return to us at a future date along with the rezoning, and we'll vote on this first before the rezoning.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We now move to our second public hearing, which is 21 RZ 18, 921 Southeast Maynard Road rezoning. Assistant Town Manager Dana Widmar will introduce the item, and Senior Housing Planner Heather Whelan will present the staff's report. Council will not take action on this item tonight, but it will be referred to our Planning and Zoning Board and will return to us at a future date. Ms. Widmar. I got Ms. Whelan down here, but you're not her.
Not at all. Good evening, Mayor and Council. We've been working towards this housing development for well over 5 years, and the interest generated in our community underscores the importance of this work. As you know, the overall high quality of life, the incredible parks and greenways, and the many environmental initiatives are what makes Cary so attractive. Young families are moving to the area, and seniors are choosing to stay. All of this increases property values in Cary, which is a great thing. In fact, everything we do makes Cary more desirable and, consequently, less affordable. So tonight, we are talking about a very special circumstance because Cary is spearheading the implementation of affordable units in our own community. We are the applicant for rezoning a town-owned parcel. And most importantly, we're doing it in a way that is uniquely Cary, with a mixed-income development in a highly desirable, walkable location. This proposal further advances the urban pattern that is clearly articulated in the Imagine Cary Community Plan for both downtown Cary and for the nearby Eastern Cary Gateway. The vision for this specific development grew from Councilmember Bush's participation in the Wake County Affordable Housing Task Force, which recommended that municipalities repurpose underutilized public land for affordable housing. At the same time, Cary decided to not use the 5-acre tract in this location for a water tower. I'm sure you all remember. the community rallied to save the Cary High School water tower. It was proposed to be decommissioned and replaced with a much larger water tower on this very site. The water tower idea was abandoned in approximately 2016, and instead Cary constructed the Kilmaine Tower and rehabilitated the Cary High School water tower. That's when we first started talking about this site for housing. Then in 2019, Cary issued an RFP for transit-oriented development and identified a preferred developer. Cary purchased the additional 2 acres for housing in 2021, and this public hearing is the next step in the process. In the future, when this proposal comes back for final consideration, you'll see a developer agreement, and there will be a long-term lease because Cary will retain ownership. Since we embarked on the rezoning process, there has been significant public input. Those in favor recognize the critical need for such a development. At the same time, this process opened dialogue with community members regarding their concerns for the area. Concerns included travel speeds on Ryan Road, as well as other traffic concerns not directly related to this development. Staff will continue to work with residents of the area to assess if other measures, such as traffic calming, may be desirable for their neighborhood. Additionally, there has been some misinformation circulating about the intended use of this site. In 2003, concepts were prepared for multiple properties owned by Wake County Public School System. These concepts were included in the appendix of the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Master Plan. This was done in case an opportunity presented itself for Cary to participate in joint use agreements. 15 years ago, Cary purchased 5 acres of East Cary Middle School site for use as a water tower. The school concepts were later transferred unedited to the 2012 master plan despite the prior disposition of land. No agreements with Wake County Public Schools ever resulted from those concepts. Instead, the schools initiated a more comprehensive process to dispose of surplus land, making the additional 2 acres at East Cary Middle School available for purchase. Cary purchased the additional 2 acres of land for mixed-income housing in 2021. There was never a decision for a Cary-owned park in this location. The case manager, Heather Wheelahan, is here to present details of the rezoning.
Thank you, Dana, and good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm happy to be here with you tonight. As you heard, the town of Cary is the property owner and applicant for this rezoning proposal. However, the rezoning case must go through the required regulatory process, and our planning and development team is reviewing it as we would any other proposal. So tonight is the public hearing. I'm going to present, as you're accustomed to seeing, the site's existing conditions, the components of the rezoning proposal, and staff's analysis of the case against the Cary Community Plan. This is a proposal to rezone a little over 7 acres at 921 Southeast Maynard Road. The property is along Southeast Maynard between East Cary Elementary School and the Village Square Commercial Center. It's 1 mile from downtown Cary and just down the road from Adams Elementary, the Fenton, and the future site of the Epic Games headquarters. The property is currently zoned R12, Residential 12, and is within the mixed-use overlay district, which calls for a mix of uses and functions in a highly integrated, cohesive manner. The mixed-use overlay district is intended to function as a neighborhood which concentrates land uses, reduces sprawl, reduces automobile trips, and facilitates convenient and safe circulation. Cary's proposing to rezone the property to MXD, mixed-use district, with a preliminary development plan. Cary's GIS maps indicate the site's northern and eastern property boundaries run along a stream buffer. Field determination of these streams has been already made. This is a view of the site in relation to Southeast Maynard Road looking south. There are overhead power lines running along the east side of Southeast Maynard. You can see those here to the left of this picture. The lines cross over the street and connect to a utility pole located a few feet into this site. The 50-foot landscape buffer on Southeast Maynard will be provided outside of any utility easements. The development fronts Southeast Maynard Road, a 5-lane thoroughfare. Southeast Maynard is built out to its ultimate width and is consistent with the Cary Community Plan. To meet LDO requirements for emergency response and connectivity, the development will also have access to Ryan Road by way of a new public connection. Cary's engaged in discussions with the Village Square Commercial Center owners to secure the necessary easements and right-of-way to accomplish this required access. The approximate location of this road is shown here with the blue and white dashed line. We are aware of some concern for traffic in the area, particularly on Ryan Road and at the Ryan-Walnut intersection. Town staff is working with our traffic engineers to determine which improvements are appropriate. Go Cary Route 1 currently serves Southeast Maynard Road immediately adjacent to the subject property. Southeast Maynard has also been identified as route for the Western Bus Rapid Transit, or BRT corridor. This service, connecting downtown Cary to downtown Raleigh, is expected to be implemented by 2027. As you heard from Dana, we received some questions from citizens regarding parkland in this area. The Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Master Plan does not identify any proposed parks within this site. However, the proposed Dunham Park Greenway corridor is located within the site. It extends from Southeast Maynard to the western property line and then continues on to Ryan Road. Both the on- and off-site trail segments will be constructed with this development, which completes this greenway. As you can see, there are 7 parks in the vicinity of this site. RS Dunham Park, currently being upgraded by 2019 Shaping Cary's Tomorrow bonds, is just a 1/10 a mile to the west. Lions Park, Urban Park, and the Cary Downtown Park are all less than a mile away. These parks and greenways together provide the level of service expected by Cary citizens. As you know, a preliminary development plan is required within the MXD zoning district. The PDP illustrates the general layout of the site and identifies the proposed standards and modifications. You can see here the footprint of the multifamily building, proposed to be a minimum of 3 stories and a maximum of 65 feet and 4 stories. The parking proposed to be provided at 0.75 spaces per bedroom, which in staff's analysis is sufficient and in alignment with the environmental and land use goals for this mixed-use overlay district, which is directly adjacent to transit, schools, and shopping. The stormwater control device here, which will be constructed in accordance with LDO and all environmental regulations. The roads and access points, including the new connection from Ryan to Maynard. Construction of the on- and off-site greenway trails, which will provide pedestrian connection from Maynard to Ryan and complete the Dunham Greenway. There will be a minimum of 1,200 square feet of community gathering areas, and this is in addition to the on-site greenway being constructed. There will be substantial perimeter and stream buffers, including a 30-foot buffer along the southern and western property boundary, and a 50-foot stream buffer along the northern boundary, and a 100-foot stream buffer along the eastern boundary. A tree survey identified 2 champion trees on the site, a 42-inch oak and a 36-inch poplar, both of which are being preserved with this proposal. This mixed income development proposal also includes a condition requiring half the units to be affordable to households earning a maximum of 80% of the area median income. This condition would be in place for a minimum of 30 years, and the other half of the units will be market rate units. To give you a sense of what those 80% max numbers are, a single person household would be limited to earning around $53,000, 2-person household around $61,000, 3-person around $68,000, and a 4-person household up to about $76,500. The property is in both the Commercial Center and Heritage Neighborhood Future Growth Framework designations. The Cary Community Plan allows for commercial centers to incorporate housing on opportunity or infill sites, particularly when well connected and adjacent to development by pedestrian facilities and roads, as this site is. Heritage neighborhoods include a variety of housing types, sizes, and price points. Multifamily residential is a use consistent with both designations. In staff's preliminary analysis, this proposal supports the Imagine Cary Community Plan Live Chapter policies, expanding housing choices for residents, supporting residential development on infill sites, and supporting affordable housing. It also supports the work chapter by providing housing options to grow a sustainable and diverse workforce. The rezoning supports engaged policies by completing a greenway network and maintaining a balanced park system. The proposal supports SHAPE by facilitating infill development and providing appropriate transition between land uses. The rezoning supports MOVE policies by helping to ensure safety and designing transportation infrastructure to address land use context. The proposal supports SERVE policies by protecting the natural environment, improving sustainable practices, and preserving urban tree canopy. Due to that level of citizen interest, staff facilitated 2 virtual neighborhood meetings. 97 citizens attended in January and 74 in February. There were questions and comments regarding traffic on Ryan Road, the affordability component, building height and the number of units, tree preservation and stormwater, the amount of multifamily in the vicinity, and general support for the development. Staff received 57 emails from 22 different citizens and 3 calls since the neighborhood meeting. The comments and questions were similar to those shared in the neighborhood as mentioned. We mailed public hearing notification to property owners within 800 feet of the subject site, and this exceeds both the state's and Cary's LDO requirements. We also posted notice of the public hearing on the property and Cary's website. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you, Council. At this time, Morgan Mansa is going to speak with you on behalf of our applicant, Town of Cary. Following Morgan and the public hearing, I'll be available for questions.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The last time I stood before you was for the adoption of the Cary Housing Plan, which is rooted in the Imagine Cary Community Plan, our guiding document for the future of Cary. Many communities pass housing plans which subsequently sit on a shelf. But in Cary, our plans come to life because we are authentically committed to making sure that all of our residents live inspired. We are proposing a rezoning to build on town-owned property, mixed-income housing that honors the environment and will serve as a model for our neighbors and for the state of North Carolina. 42% of this site will be maintained as green space. For the first time in our history, solar panels will be installed to the roofs of affordable housing. This site craves walkability with its close proximity to businesses, amenities, and a future bus rapid transit line. We're intentionally proposing mixed-income housing because it reflects the organic demographics of our community. The affordability at this site is critical because we all know that developments like Fenton, the future redevelopment of South Hills, and the location of Epic Games will require more qualified workers to live in our community. This proposal is not only for what we're seeing today, but it is more importantly securing diverse housing options for the future of Cary. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak this evening, and I believe it's now time to open this public hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Manza. So now is the time for the public hearing 21 REZ 18 921 Southeast Maynard Road rezoning. And I'm going to call on the clerk to summarize the written comments and the call-in comments.
Teresa Elick submitted comments in opposition as she feels this rezoning creates negative consequences for the existing neighborhood. Stephanie Link submitted comments in opposition regarding surrounding property values. 10 people submitted comments of support. Their names were James Amy, Jessica McDonald, Justin Eaton, Aurea, Mary Wilson, Tom Murray, Mark Blinkley, Leanna Moreno, Susan Noden, and Karen Upchurch. Elizabeth King and Admin Davis submitted comments and signed up to speak to summarize their comments that they submitted. And those comments are in front of you. And then One Wake submitted their support for the project that was signed by 135 members of their organization. We had no call-in speakers, but we do have a number of registered speakers.
Okay.
Our first registered speaker is Lee Cochran.
Was that in this packet?
Thank you. My name is Lee Cochran, Senior Vice President of Development at Laurel Street. We are thrilled to be the Town of Cary's partner for this development. Laurel Street's a Charlotte-based firm that develops high-quality, mixed-income communities for working families and seniors that are affordable to a variety of incomes. While we're based in Charlotte, we operate throughout the Southeast with communities from Richmond to Atlanta, with a focus and emphasis on development in North Carolina. We're a 21-person strong team in our 11th year of operation and are well known for our partnership approach, having worked with municipalities, faith-based institutions, and other nonprofits to help them achieve their vision for affordable and mixed-income housing. Laurel Street is a minority-owned and women-owned company with a development portfolio of approximately 5,000 units, serving both seniors and families. I won't repeat details about this development that have already been addressed, but I did want to make a few points relative to how we've worked with the town on this development and responded to comments from the community. First, building placement. I remember the very first concept we received from our design team for this development that placed the building toward the west edge of the site, because that maximized the efficiency of the building design. With feedback from the town, we immediately revised the design to bring the building as close to Maynard Road as possible without disturbing the stream buffers on the property. We've continued to work on the placement of the building to accomplish two important goals: moving the units as close to Maynard Road transit corridor as possible, while also lining the building up with the commercial uses along Maynard Road, leaving a transition area back to the single-family uses to the west. Second, building scale. We worked very hard with our design team to respond to the comments that we heard during our 2 community meetings and in individual follow-up conversations. We now have a design that reduces the height of the building from 5 stories to 4, while still preserving the unit count that we wanted to do at this development. This was a major concern of the community that we feel like we've addressed. Third, outdoor space and amenities. The development represents a great blending of private and public outdoor spaces and amenities. Since our building is an elevator-served, interior quarter building with an L shape, we're able to create a great private outdoor amenity for our residents at that building bend that blends together with the interior amenities of the building. But in addition to the private outdoor amenity, we're also constructing a public greenway across the site and a public outdoor community gathering space adjacent to the greenway. This greenway extension will serve as a great pedestrian and bike connector for the public from Maynard Road to Dunham Park. These private and public outdoor spaces will take advantage of the large portion of the site we have left undisturbed around the stream through the site. Finally, I'll end with where I should have started, which is why we are so excited about this site in particular. You rarely get the opportunity to develop mixed-income housing that has immediate proximity to transit, education, 3 schools within a half a mile, employment, again, 3 schools within a half a mile, plus all the other employment in the area, recreation and retail. The town is to be commended for taking the initiative to make something like this possible. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Philip Telfer. And then following him is Gianna Ford.
Mayor Weinbrecht and council members, my name is Phil Telfer. I live at 303 Oregon Circle in Cary. That's in Farmington Woods, and we're about 3 blocks from the Farmington Woods School. Before moving to Farmington Woods, though, we lived in Iron Gate, which is one of the subdivisions. It's very close to where Laurel Street development is proposed for. I wanted to speak tonight to express full support for this project. I believe that our experience in Farmington Woods parallels many of the concerns that we heard during the public discussions about the project. The first one was traffic. We live in a cul-de-sac on Hampton Valley Road, which is a cut-through between Maynard Road and Cary Parkway. Traffic has been a concern in our area also, but in our experience, it has been well handled by the town with speed bumps, stop signs, and speed enforcement. Another issue that was raised was density. Long before we moved to Farmington Woods, or long after we moved to Farmington Woods, a 247-unit apartment complex was constructed across Cary Parkway from Farmington Woods School. Despite the increase in density and having renters versus owners, neither traffic nor home prices have suffered. Recently, a house on the Hampton Valley cut-through sold for $100,000 over the asking price. And neighbors of ours have been thankful that their adult children could live in the nearby apartments. Thirdly, we've heard that there is concern that because Ryan Springs is already over on Ryan Road, that this again would create some problems with traffic or density. Since we moved in where we are on Hampton Valley Road, Woodland Terrace, the senior facility, was open down the road from us near an intersection of Farmington Woods and Kildare Farm Road. This needed facility has not resulted in disruption in our neighborhood. In fact, friends of ours have been able to use that facility for loved ones. So I think that a lot of the concerns that we have heard can be adequately addressed. Affordable housing is needed in Cary as recognized by the plan adopted by this council. A plan does nothing without implementation, but to bring it down to a personal level, our daughter, an occupational therapy assistant, recently told us that she could not afford to live in Cary. Many like her who serve our community are in the same boat. I urge you to pass this rezoning when it comes back before you and allow all 130 units of the proposed development to take place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jean Ford. And then our speaker after that is Wolfgang Hertz Lane.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Jean Ford, and I have lived in Cary since 1981. Since my retirement as an attorney here, I've become involved in various efforts to address the town's shortage of affordable housing. I am co-chair of the Wake County League of Women Voters Affordable Housing Committee. I serve on the Western Regional Affordable Housing Action Group, and I'm the affordable housing point person for my church, Christ the King Lutheran. We all understand that finding or keeping an affordable place to live in Cary can be difficult for many who want to call this community home. That applies especially to younger people, the elderly, employees in our service economy, and our public. We want and we need these residents. It's in that spirit that the town of Cary has gone to great lengths to put together the Laurel Street proposal and to solicit public feedback. The council is providing thorough oversight for this project. The bottom line, it appears to me, is that this development represents an opportunity we cannot afford to miss. It has an excellent location, convenient to shopping, schools, and public transit. The fact that the town would retain ownership of the property has helped to attract a well-regarded developer ready to invest. It could be fairly asked, if not here and now, then when and where? Of course, Laurel Street won't solve Cary's affordable housing crisis, and it is a crisis. More work is needed and more units must be provided, but this development would be a solid step in the right direction, very much in line with town policies and with the Cary Housing Plan that, to your credit, you recently approved. I and my colleagues urge you to listen carefully to all the concerns and questions work to address them, and in the end, find a way to yes. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Wolfgang Hertzling.
Move to your right, your left, please. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, council members, good evening. My name is Wolfgang Hertzlein. I serve as senior pastor at Christ the King Lutheran Church, and I'm here to also speak in support of this important project. Christ the King is located at 600 Walnut Street, right across the street from where Ryan Road crosses Walnut and then continues as Tanglewood Drive. Thus, we are part of the neighborhood and as a resident organization have a particular interest in seeing this important project succeed. The need for affordable housing in Cary is not disputed. It is well established in the recently adopted Cary Housing Plan. Too many people who work in Cary, some of our parishioners included, cannot afford to live in the very town they love and serve. This includes teachers and police officers, firefighters, who would have been considered middle class until they were priced out of an increasingly exclusive housing market. The Laurel Street development directly addresses this growing need. As you know, Wake County has estimated that Cary needs 6,690 units of affordable housing. Over 11,000 Cary residents are cost-burdened, paying over 30% of their income toward housing costs. The Laurel Street project may be the proverbial drop in the bucket, but it is an important beginning, and it's for this reason that we urge you to resist any attempts to decrease the number of units. We who live and worship nearby know that concerns regarding traffic and safety can be adequately addressed without shrinking this project. We are in full support of that. Many of our residents are here today, both from our church, from One Wake, from Habitat for Humanity, and all those of you who support it, I'd invite you to stand so the council can see how many of us are behind this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Donovan Fair. And then following is Elizabeth King.
Hello, and thank you for having me. My name is Donovan Favor. I live in Forest Park on Webster Street, and I'm here to provide support for the affordable housing project here in my neighborhood at 921 Southeast Maynard Road, and all affordable housing across Cary. My day job is a lecturer at North Carolina State University, go Wolfpack, in the College of Management.
You're wearing the wrong color shirt.
Yeah, well, but they did better in basketball, so I.
Yeah.
As a business professor, I sent the council support for the project, and Mayor Weinbrecht sent back the Cary Housing Plan, which I thought I needed to print out and redline, but as a professor of business, I was like, I'll give you an A+. It was very good. It was well-researched and well-written. I'm in complete agreement with it. I'm also co-owner of a couple small businesses, Doherty's Irish Pub in both Cary and Apex. I also got some good feedback from the council that some of you have gone there and enjoy it, so I appreciate your patronage for that as well. We're members of the Cary Chamber of Commerce and also the Apex Chamber of Commerce. I want to point out that our hardworking employees are dead tired at the end of their shift, and many of them have a long drive ahead of them. I would love to be able to point to affordable housing that our community has approved, which enables them to live 10 minutes from work. When they get off, have a quick ride home, live in the community. They work in the community. Why shouldn't they live in the community? So I see them as some key constituents of this. And the idea that they could have affordable housing and not spend their entire paycheck is something that I find to be very helpful. And as a business owner, I'm very supportive of it. I also want to address the issue of not in my backyard. So people who generically support affordable housing as long as it's not near them, I'm personally happy to have our employees live near me. or a school teacher, or a firefighter. These are responsible people, many with families, many who would love to enjoy the same amenities, low crime rate, the fantastic new park that Cary has to offer, both me and the rest of our citizens. I love that chart. To put it in perspective, with our annual median income of $90,000, we're talking about people who make $50,000 to $75,000 a year moving into this neighborhood. I don't think it's going to negatively affect us in any way, economically, financially, from a standpoint of our property values, et cetera. Okay, so I also don't think my employees or a school teacher or firefighter are going to ruin my neighborhood. I welcome them with open arms. On a personal note, my daughter is one of the employees of Doherty's, and I guarantee if she moved into one of those affordable units just down the street from me, I would personally be ecstatic. And for anyone who worries about who are these people that may move into this affordable housing complex, I can guarantee you my daughter is not only not dangerous, but she would be one of the best neighbors you would ever find. So I'm in high support. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Elizabeth King.
Good evening, Mayor, Councilman, women. First and foremost, I believe this property should remain treed, open space, and become a passive park when the town of Cary can afford to do so. This will better serve the people in the community and the wildlife in the area. However, if you decide not to rezone this property, then the following are my concerns. And I've submitted documentation. On the aerial photos and on this site, you'll notice they show 2 champion trees. But on the original submittal document, there was 4 champion trees on the property. They've conveniently removed them from your document. I just wanted to call that to your attention, that there are 4 champion trees. And the entire site is wooded with pines and hardwoods, which, like the woman from the Audubon Society says, they support wildlife and birds in our community. So I ask that the champion trees on the property remain, and the trees that are next to the 10-foot greenway that's proposed to go out to Maynard Road should be protected, and that greenway should be removed from underneath those trees. They have lowered the building height from 75 feet to 65 feet. However, as an example, the Ryan Springs property across Ryan Road is a 4-story building with a 55-foot building height, which is more reasonable for next to a single family, and the other 1-story structures adjacent to this property. So I ask that the council cap the building height at 55 feet, like the Ryan Road, 4-story building at 55-foot height. The parking reduction on the site that's proposed is not adequate for this property. I'd like you to raise your hands who owns a car. Councilman, women, who owns a car?
This is your time to talk, not our time to talk. Sorry.
Okay. So the applicant has not told us how many units will be on 1, 2, or 3-story units. You're not even providing 1 space for a 1-story or 1-room bedroom, and that's just not adequate. Everyone has a car. They're going to park it here. They're going to park it on our streets. They may use public transportation, but they're still going to own a car. So they need to provide adequate parking. I suggest they provide a parking analysis to determine the adequate amount of parking for this development. The gathering area on this site at 1,200 square feet is an area approximately 35 feet by 35 feet.
That's 9 square feet per unit. Not adequate for a development with 130 units. Children don't play on greenways. The park next door is at capacity. This should be treated like a multifamily development and have children's playgrounds and activities for children that will live there. The buffering on the property next to the single-family home should be increased, especially if the building gets moved around during the redevelopment of the site, which this is about the third iteration that we've seen of the development. And there's no guarantee, if you agree to a 4-story building, that it won't be put next to the single-family homes next to the site. So if indeed the building does move around closer to the buildings, I suggest a 50-foot buffer like Ryan Springs provided next to this single-family residence. The greenway on this property should provide access to the middle school. Children are not going to walk from the neighborhood all the way around the building, all the way to Maynard Road, then turn and go up Maynard Road to get to the entrance to the school. It's a perfect opportunity to provide greenway access or spur trail over to the school to provide connectivity. So I suggest that be part of the conditions of approval.
Ms. King, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Your time has expired.
Wait.
If you have comments additional from what you provided to us, if you give them to the clerk, she'll make sure
I've
we
given
get a
you what I've
copy.
been reading.
Okay. Thank you so
Very much.
much.
Anytime.
Our next speaker is Dan Pratt, and then following that is Will Gilmore.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name's Dan Pratt. I live at 308 Beach Street. That's in the Oakwood Heights subdivision in Cary. And I've lived in Cary since 1984. Our first residence was on Village Greenway, directly across the street from East Cary Middle, with rent at the time of $300 a month. I strongly support the proposed mixed income development on Cary-owned land at 921 Southeast Maynard Road. I believe it's a moral imperative for us to provide affordable housing in Cary and really appreciate your alignment with that. The proposed development is in complete alignment with the Town of Cary Housing Plan mission, which is to address the needs of low and moderate income residents, improve and expand the town's housing stock, and encourage the physical and economic revitalization of the town's neighborhoods. It provides a great opportunity for individuals and families to consider the possibility of both working and residing in Cary. My daughter benefited from a program in Summit County, Colorado, where she lives, called Deed Restricted Housing for those that work and live in the county and have income below a designated threshold to enable them to live and work, to live where they work. Leveraging town-owned property with close proximity to stores, public transit, schools, and the like, in partnership with a group that has proven experience developing successful affordable housing communities in North Carolina is a sound approach. The development is less than half a mile from Christ the King Church, as you heard from Pastor Wolfgang, where my wife and I are members, and we would love to have this development in close proximity to our church. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Will Gilmore.
Honorable Mayor and Council, I want to begin tonight by telling you that I have nothing but the greatest of respect for you, for the work you do, and for this beautiful city that we live in. I also want to let you know that I have great respect for all of the people you've heard from tonight that are here advocating strongly and genuinely about the need for affordable housing. And so I hope you take no in disrespect from any comments that I make tonight, and I hope that no one else here does either. My comments here tonight are based upon the publicly facing documents that members of the public read, that they have access to, and that I have had access to even as late as last night. And based upon those documents, I believe that this course of action that Cary has charted is in direct violation of its own policies. It's in direct violation of its own written policies that are available to the citizens of Iron Gate. And I'm a resident of Iron Gate. My wife is a resident, my 3 kids residents there. We love it there. We love it the way it is. But mostly, with respect to tonight, we love the idea that this was going to be a park. And if you look at your own, and so my primary argument to you tonight, and the thing I ask you to consider, is that your proposed rezoning violates your own LDO, the Cary Community Plan, and the PRCR Master Plan, which does identify this land as a proposed park. I say that this violates the LDO because if you just look at the fundamental principles of your LDO, it talks about, first and foremost, preserving the character and quality of residential neighborhoods, like mine, lessening the congestion of the streets. That's what this will do, or that's what this project will create, congestion in the streets. Prevent overcrowding of land and undue concentrations of population. That's what this does. Conserving natural resources and environmental quality for the town and its residents. Those are the fundamental principles of the LDO, your public policy document that should guide all of your decisions. But more so than that, the LDO incorporates directly a graphic of a park at this particular site. And so everything that must take place with respect to this rezoning is supposed to be done in line with your public policy document. There is a graphic, and you can see it, it's in front of you in this package, which shows a park at this site. And contrary to what you've heard, it is not simply a graphic of a conjecture that someone has about what could happen at this location. That park was based upon a study that you all funded, that you conducted, and as a result of which you developed a policy document, the end result of which said, quote, the south end of this site is proposed as a small, passive-oriented park. So I take issue, respectfully, with what you've heard tonight, the argument that that there is no proposed park at this location. And I believe that we reached that result. I believe that you all have reached that result, unfortunately, based upon an unusual bias that you face in this case. You are council members that are called upon to decide how your own land use ordinance relates to your own property. And so it creates, sadly, a fundamental conflict of interest for you in this case. The applicant for the rezoning, Ms. Whalahan, is also the very same staff member who is advising you on whether this rezoning meets your own policy objectives. So I ask you, as you consider this, think very carefully about whether there's bias that's been built into the advice that you're receiving when it comes to whether this property complies with the LDO. And I think that bias really shows through when you look at the fact that the staff report you've received from Ms. Whalahan in this case, it contains a falsehood. It states, quote, the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Master Plan does not include a proposed park within the adjacent site. And yet, if you look at that very same document, which I can pull up even as late as last night, it states the south end of the site is proposed as a small passive-oriented park. And then it goes on to name East Cary Park as one of those proposed parks. More so, it states the purpose of the proposed park site is to, quote, serve recreation needs in areas less adequately served by public parks. That's your finding, that this place was less, that needed a park. It states in there that the 3 parks that were identified, this one being one, is identified as having particularly significant recreational and potential needs to be upgraded and serve as a neighborhood park.
this is a place where,
Mr. Gilmore, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you at this time.
I understand.
If you have additional information that you
I
would
have-
like us to have,
I have documents that I really wish that you would consider before you.
and if that's in addition to what you've given us, please let the clerk have them, and she'll make sure we get a copy.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is April Farley.
I don't have much experience with this. Hi, my name is April Farley. I've lived in the Iron Gate neighborhood for the past 6 years. Iron Gate was established in 1974. We have approximately 229 homes. The neighborhood consists of a wide variety of residents, from retired and current school teachers, veterans, musicians, small business owners, frontline workers, special needs children and adults, and so much more. So to the accusation that being against this rezoning is being a NIMBY, which I did not want to address that, this is absolutely not the case. Those citizens that this project hopes to serve do in fact live in my backyard. We came upon this rezoning meeting very early on. Some of the residents started walking around, talking to our neighbors, making sure they were aware of the project and that they could attend the neighborhood meetings. I decided to take out a part of this because it's already been addressed. And I also want to address Dana's suggestion that we have a campaign of misinformation. That is absolutely false. We have presented the map that Mr. Gilmore has in his presentation as well as a proposal from 2003 that again is still available on the website. It basically gave a visual to what this space could have been at some point for the people in our neighborhood that have lived there from the beginning, that could have enjoyed this park, that would have enjoyed this park. As everyone's addressed, green space is dwindling. It needs to be a priority. We cannot grow more land. This is 7 acres. If you look at the map that's been shown with this project, there's a lot of concrete around it. This 7 acres is an opportunity to leave an ecology there that can be enjoyed as educational opportunities for all the schools around it, as a retreat for the people that live nearby and the people that come to visit. And I think that that is very important. I think Cary's resourceful, and they can make a statement that saving this land is important. Looking at the statement of values, which was adopted by the town council on August 22nd, 2006, the last statement reads, "We will be good stewards of our finite natural resources." Well, here it is. This is a finite natural resource. We should preserve it. We're asking the council to invest in this old area of Cary, preserve this 7 acres of land for those residents who've been a part of this area for so long, for the residents that are coming to this part of Cary, and for those who are new, like myself. I found this quote on the Town of Cary's Park and Recreation and Cultural Resources page. "Youth living in neighborhoods with multiple recreation and park facilities are more likely to be active 5 times a week." The source of that quote is National Recreation and Park Association. As a parent and frequent visitor of parks and greenways, I see endless benefits of keeping this land natural. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and sorry, I have one last thing. We did have a petition going around our neighborhood just within the last week showing the map of the park that's being referenced. It was presented as a proposal. It was not presented as a definite. This was just to give our neighbors an idea of what could have been there. We all have commitments. There's been a group of us circulating the petition. 90 residents we were able to talk to and have signed the petition against rezoning and for the construction of the park. I understand there's a competing petition that was going around for the rezoning. I have people that have told me that they have signed both, that they understand the merits of the project, but if they had the choice, they would rather have the land left undisturbed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mo Maldonado.
He couldn't be present tonight.
Okay. Same for Mala. All right, and after Mala as well, Patrick Mylon?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Patricia Loskamilam. My husband and I live at 409 Ryan Road in the Iron Gate community. I just shared a presentation with the clerk from one of our neighbors, Amanda Benson, who asked me to share it with the council. I just wanted to reiterate, I think some of my neighbors have spoken eloquently on why the neighborhood of Iron Gate feels quite strongly that this property should be maintained as green space, preferably a passive park. I can appreciate, the town's efforts with town-owned land, which I know is in short supply, to incorporate affordable housing. As many of the rest of my neighbors, my husband and I feel strongly that, affordable housing is important. I appreciate the town's efforts to encourage affordable housing, but at the same token, we're losing green space at a tremendous rate and tree canopy. And as April so eloquently put it, once it's gone, it is gone. I do honestly feel to realistically address the issue of the need for affordable housing, I would encourage the town to try to explore avenues of partnership with private developers, commercial development. As we know, there's a great deal of a development going on in Cary at this time, the Fenton, the Walker Apartments, various condos and apartments on Chatham Street. If there's any way, I think, that we're really going to address the issue of affordable housing, it's going to have to be on a larger scale, preferably in partnership with some of these developers. I'd love to see the town explore, that avenue. That having been said, I don't want it to come across that we're very much don't want this in our backyards or that we're worried about our property values. It honestly is the loss of green space. We've just lost a large amount of acreage to the Fenton, and pardon me. At some point, animals have nowhere to go, and it's becoming, as a nature lover myself, and I know many people here, I'm sure, are nature lovers as well. That's of a great deal of concern to me. As grandmother, it's a concern to me what we leave our grandchildren in the way of green space and tree canopy. So respectfully, I would ask the council to please take this issue into consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Our next speaker is Admin Davis.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Amin Davis. I've been a resident of Cary for 20 years this month. I live in the Beach Tree community. But tonight I'm representing Partners for Environmental Justice. We are a community-based nonprofit organization that advocates for the equitable treatment of both human and natural communities in Southeast Raleigh, as well as flood-sensitive communities along Walnut Creek, which incidentally begins right near Cary Town Center. We were notified about this rezoning by a concerned citizen who lives nearby this site. PEJ and our stakeholders are definitely supportive of affordable housing and even recently have had meetings with some affordable housing organizations and proponents. However, the proposed site is located less than a mile upstream from a FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, regulated floodplain along Walnut Creek, which extends into a flood-sensitive portion of the Ivy Meadows subdivision. Therefore, we would like to respectfully request that the town include conditions as part of this rezoning request that encourage the implementation of above and beyond low-impact development and stormwater management practices. So some specific conditions could include low-impact development measures during site clearing and construction per the 5 basic strategies outlined in the Low-Impact Development, a Guidebook for North Carolina document, aggressive use of green stormwater infrastructure in all phases of site development, and runoff volume matching, which is kind of a technical, I'm getting into technical stormwater stuff, but your stormwater folks will probably know what this means. Require that instead of runoff treatment per Chapter A1 of DEQ's State Stormwater Manual. These requests directly correspond to policy number 3 of the town's 2040 plan, encourage environmentally responsible stormwater management. We believe these measures are necessary for the following reasons. 1, site development will deliver additional stormwater runoff to a nearby flood-sensitive community. Secondly, historic and current flooding is prevalent in downstream communities along Walnut Creek, and that's where our nonprofit was formed because of flooding in the Rochester Heights community. Third, current stormwater requirement, documented research in North Carolina shows that current stormwater requirements and practices may not be sufficient to adequately protect downstream waters from further degradation. And lastly, Walnut Creek was recently designated as an impaired water body, which means it's either polluted or not meeting its intended Clean Water Act requirements by the US EPA. And staff with the Town of Cary, City of Raleigh, Division of Water Resources, NCDOT, and some other agencies began meeting back in 2017 to address these water resource challenges that Walnut Creek is facing. And we were informally known as the Walnut Creek Watershed Action Team. There is a Walnut Creek Watershed Action Plan that is actually on EPA's website that is a plan for trying to address some of these impairments. So the last thing I want to mention is the implementation of low-impact development and green stormwater infrastructure well beyond the required regulatory requirements can provide multiple community benefits outside of just environmental benefits. Some of these could be economic benefits, such as green workforce development and supporting that. A social benefit could be environmental education. So if there's signage put in at this site, if there are rain gardens constructed, so on and so forth, that could provide environmental education opportunities for the residents that live there. Public health benefit would be, maintaining and protecting our air quality. When you have green things, whether it be in the rain gardens or protecting the green spaces that are there, it's going to help to maintain adequate air quality. So with that, we have spoken with a Town of Cary staff member who's here tonight about our concerns and look forward to meeting with them. In closing, we respectfully request that the Town Council give serious consideration to our requests that we believe can be mutually beneficial to the town, its current and future residents, and the greater Walnut Creek watershed community. This development project is a unique opportunity to address past environmental injustices, collaborate with community partners with ongoing initiatives, and implement a project in an environmentally sustainable and equitable manner. We appreciate your public service to the town of Cary.
Time has expired.
Thank you.
So sorry. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Robert Skoll.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to speak tonight. I first became interested in this topic because a neighbor of mine, he had a 50% increase in his rent. And I've also noticed a lot of the affordable housing being torn down in the neighborhood and replaced by more upscale housing. So I particularly like this project because it really tries to keep some of the working families in the city that otherwise are are actually leaving. I attended the 2 neighborhood meetings concerning the Laurel Street proposal. In the first meeting, there were several people who spoke out against the project, mostly because of their concern about the increased traffic. That was the comment that I heard the most. 2 of them identified themselves as living on Ryan Road, and one of them identified himself as living on Holt's Lane. There were others who lived in the neighborhood further out, and still more people who you really couldn't tell where they lived. Based upon the expressed opposition to the apartments and concern about traffic, some friends and I decided to conduct a door-to-door canvass specifically in favor of building the Laurel Street apartments, and we really wanted to see what would actually happen. Because traffic was the principal concern, I decided to go down Ryan Road in Holtz, and that's one of the main corridors going into the neighborhood. Ryan and Holtz both run into Park, which runs east-west instead of north-south, and there's another corridor, Urban. I went down each of those corridors. Much to my surprise, I collected 23 signatures in favor of the apartments on Ryan and 11 signatures in favor of the apartments on Holt's Lane. And I only encountered 3 persons altogether who opposed on those 2 streets. On Ryan, I actually got 4 signatures from adults from the single-family home that is closest to facing the woods where the apartments would be built, and those 4 people signed. And in the house on the other side of the street, that is the second closest to the woods, another person signed. So immediate proximity to the location does not appear to be a very important factor in public opinion on this. If you add in the 3 persons on Ryan and Holtz who spoke against the apartments at the neighborhood meetings, and the 3 more that I encountered, altogether there were 34 in favor and only 6 who were in opposition to the construction. Now, of course, there were others who did not sign, but none of the others said that they were against building the apartments. You know, the hard thing is to try to talk to people in the first place. On Park Street and Urban Street and the apartments to the north, we found people who were against, but the results, as you can see in the statistics that I passed out, they really weren't any different than there were in Ryan Street and Holtz. In all, the streets, there were additional people who signed who were just walking through the neighborhood, and some of them lived close by and some of them lived further away. Altogether, we got 184 signatures in favor of the apartments, and only 6 people who told us that they were against it. And I really have to say this, the most common first response that I got when I went door to door or stopped someone, going down the sidewalk, was they really thought I was getting signatures against the apartments. And it was actually very difficult to overcome that. But once I broke through this misconception, they finally looked at the petition and they frequently said something like this: wait a minute, you mean this is actually for the apartments? Oh, I'll sign that. That was really the response that I got over and over again, but it was hard to get to that point. So I think this is an important stereotype to reconsider. We have all seen news stories and Hollywood movies about neighbors being against something, so the expectation is that anyone like me going door to door will be against it as well.
Mr. Skull.
So I have a rhetorical
Mr. Skull, I'm
question.
sorry to have to interrupt
Oh, I
you.
used it up.
Your time is expired.
That's the way it goes.
If you have additional comments, please give them to our clerk so we can get a copy. Thank you.
No other registered speakers.
So that's the end of those who have signed up. If you are here, if you are present and you would like to speak, now's your opportunity, and I would invite the first speaker forward. Please.
Good evening. I'm Teresa Stallings. My husband and I have lived in Cary here since 1992. We're in the Northwoods neighborhood, about a half mile just up the road. And I'd like to speak in support of the proposed Laurel Street apartment because we need these apartments. Many of the people who make Cary a great place to live can't afford to live here. And I'm talking about the hardworking people like our school teachers, healthcare workers, police, plumbers, and all those people we see every day waiting on us in the stores and in the restaurants. And these are vital, hardworking people who contribute so much to the quality of life in Cary, and they deserve to live in the community that they support. So Cary needs to embrace and welcome these workers, and I'd like the town council to support and approve the Laurel Street apartment complex. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak at this public hearing?
Hi, I'm Teresa Ellick, and I am a Ryan Road resident. I have been a Ryan Road resident for 44 years. And I do want to say that those of us in the neighborhood that have expressed our concern about this building are not because it's not in our neighborhood. And so I do need to make sure that you understand that. We are definitely for affordable housing, and it's not about not in my neighborhood, because if you know anything about Iron Gate, the mobile home park that borders Iron Gate was there before Iron Gate was built. So all of us moving in to Iron Gate knew that affordable, truly deeply affordable housing was bordering our community. So it certainly is not that we are against affordable housing, not at all. This new proposed project is saying that 50% of the units, of the 130 units, are to be for affordable housing. And as a prior speaker mentioned, Cary is currently short 6,600 affordable units. Now, we have a national problem, we have a North Carolina problem, we have a Wake County problem, and obviously with the 6,600, we have a Cary problem. So 62 units is a grain of sand off of a very large beach. And with the existing buildings that are going up, Fenton, the massive apartment complex that's going up on the corner of Maynard and Chapel Hill Road, all of the tall buildings going up around downtown. We are, as Cary, we are addressing the shortage of housing, because there's a general shortage of housing, as well as an affordable housing shortage. So as we are increasing the not affordable housing, Fenton, the apartments going up on the corner of Chapel Hill and Maynard, we are ever widening that gap between affordable and not affordable. So my concern as a citizen in Iron Gate is that we are doing more window dressing rather than addressing affordable housing with this project. We are not in Iron Gate afraid of in my backyard. We have Section 8 housing with Ryan Springs at the end of Ryan Road. We have mobile home parks at the other end of Ryan Road. So we're not afraid of who's going to come into our neighborhood. And as the town planners had explained, this is not even geared towards those that are in their mobile home parks. This is geared towards the policemen, the teachers, the salaries in those ranges. On Ryan Road, we have had 3 automobile accidents in the past year, of where 2 of those cars that were hit, they were cars that were parked on Ryan. 2 of those cars were totaled. So there is a concern when you're going to add 130-plus cars that are going to use Ryan Road as a cut-through. Those of us living on Ryan Road already see it, already know it, and 3 of our residents have experienced the problem with that. One of those that is my next-door neighbor, I think it took 4 months for them to even be able to get a replacement car because of the problems with availability of those commodities now. So this is our concern. It's not who's going to move in, it's what the negative consequences are going to be to our neighborhood. Thank you all very much for your time. I appreciate it. And I also want to say your town planners really have done a phenomenal job. If I were hiring people for anything, I'd hire those people. They do a great job. And Laurel Street, I think they're a very quality group. And my time is up. Thank you all.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak at this public hearing? Anyone at all? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. And first of all, I want to thank everyone who came out and spoke, and those who are watching that didn't come out to speak. Thank you for participating in the process. The process is not over, it's just beginning. So what happens now is this will go to our Planning and Zoning Board, and they will review and see how it fits the Cary Community Plan. They will make a recommendation, and it will come back to council for a decision. And this is usually at least a couple of months out. So there's plenty of time to communicate with your elected leaders, with staff, about any questions or concerns you have. In addition, if you would like to come speak at a council meeting about this topic, you can do that. Every council meeting you want to do that. At Public Speaks Out, you have 3 minutes to talk on anything that's not a public hearing. So if you felt like you wanted to say something tonight and you didn't really get that opportunity, you have that opportunity next meeting and any meeting after that. Having said that, I heard a lot of statements that I just want to invite you to go to our website. We have done extensive work on stormwater. And I can tell you that almost all the problems we have with stormwater was before we had stormwater rules. And that's what we're trying to fix. Are those old properties that wouldn't be allowed to be built today, how do you fix that without taking their property? So there's a lot of information online about stormwater. We are doing a tremendous amount with the environment. Thank you, Dana Widmar. She's heading that up. If you want to know where we're planting trees, if you want to know what we're protecting, as a matter of fact, we've permanently protected 30% of Cary, am I right? 30% of Cary is protected, and trees are there, and that's a guarantee forever. We will have those trees. Find out more about what we're doing, what our initiatives are, and if you have questions, you can send them to Ms. Widmar, send them to me. I'll get you the answers to that. And then the one other comment that I want to make clear, that yes, this is a town rezoning, but any property in Cary can come in for a rezoning. So even if this wasn't a town rezoning, and even if it is fully wooded, the property owner has the right to come in and ask for a rezoning, and we have no authority to stop that. They have that right. In addition, when they come in, we cannot require them to add extra buffers, add this, add that. We can ask, but that's the authority limits we have. So those things I wanted to mention. And if any of that's confusing to you, I invite you to contact me, contact whoever on staff. Who's the liaison for this? Is
Heather.
Ms. Whelan? Okay. Contact Ms. Whelan, contact me, and we'll get you the answers to your question, because that's what this process is about. It's about you understanding what's going on and how we can all work together for the best solution. So those are my comments, and at this time, I'd like to open it up to my colleagues for their thoughts.
Before we do thoughts, I have a couple of questions.
Okay?
Could someone address the concern about 4 champion trees, but it's now 2 champion trees?
Yes, I can address that. There was a tree survey done by our development partners, Laurel Street, and these are the only 2 champion trees identified on site. So champion tree is defined as a tree with a 32-inch caliper or greater for a hardwood, or 40 inches or more for a pine. So none of the other trees on the site met that definition as champion.
Okay. Could I just do the questions? Is there a connection that's currently planned between this project and East Cary Middle School?
Not at this time.
Because I think there is one there today. There's some sort of, what do we call it, user-defined connection?
Okay.
Where kids might have, cut through. So could we take a look at that, work with the school system to?
Absolutely.
And then just to follow up on the mayor's comment, can someone address the stormwater concerns of Mr. Davis from the Partners of Environmental Justice and let us know where we are with that?
Morgan has been in contact with Mr. Davis, and we do have time set up to talk about that and to reconcile what we already do, what's already a part of our Cary above and beyond regulations, and then to understand the other recommendations that the organization has and to see where we could potentially integrate those.
Great.
Those are my questions. Point of clarification to that, if I could add to
Yeah,
that?
I'm done with my
Appreciate that. I mean, I just recall years ago, you talked about above and beyond. We created the committee. We found out that we had some of the leading edge citizens in the country regarding stormwater. And we put together that group. And, one of the first things we recognized is, the Walnut Creek, the greater Walnut Creek that was brought up earlier, it doesn't listen to boundaries. So we realized that we were going to do something that was even greater than Cary. And, maybe you can find it, and maybe you all can tell me where it is. I don't think we do a good job of summarizing that and where people can find that. It may be on our site, but I think we need to just do a better job of having those links, because there's a lot of interest in the stormwater, and there's so much that we're doing. And what I would not want is our activities to improve that situation to get in the way of the emotions that we're hearing, that maybe that's a concern that folks have, that stormwater issue is going to get worse. It's not, and we're working on it and have been working on it for many years. And we just got to make sure that that's more effectively communicated. My point of view on that.
Other thoughts?
Well, I just want to add my thanks to the speakers tonight and to everyone who attended. This is a true public hearing, and it's exactly what we wanted. We wanted to hear from the public tonight. We did. Lori had addressed a couple of my comments already. I had the question about how many champion trees are there really there, and also the stormwater issues from the Partners for Environmental Justice. I'd like to hear the responses after you meet with them for that. Looking at some other things, the traffic on Ryan Road may not be directly related to this rezoning, but one of the staff folks mentioned earlier that you are going to be working with the transportation team to see if that can be addressed.
That's correct, yeah. We are at this time looking at what traffic mitigation is feasible, possible, and some of the traffic calming measures that we can take are also citizen-initiated. So I know that that is something the citizens can also pursue, and we've provided that information to them.
Beautiful. There was a mention about the height, 65 feet. That does seem high for 4 stories. So I don't know if there's a good reason for that. If you don't know now, you can, tell me later.
I don't know what the average story, number of feet that correlate to a story, but I think that is around 14 feet. So I think that, our development review staff did feel that 4 stories correlates reasonably to 65 feet.
Yeah, it's a little high, but it's a question. And in the staff report, it mentioned there would be additional environmental components possibly added. I think Morgan mentioned solar panels earlier. That would be wonderful. If we can get more detail about that or other environmental components before we see this the next time, that would be great. And I guess in general, this rezoning is probably not perfect. That's been made clear by a number of the speakers tonight. But a rezoning that we get is never perfect. I don't remember any rezoning that we've gotten that had 100% buy-in by the neighbors and had no need for any modifications whatsoever. There's no such thing as perfect. There are so many good things with this. The proximity to schools, transportation services, remarkable. 42% green or natural areas is remarkable. There's a lot of pros and cons, and I took a lot of good notes. I'll be weighing these pros and cons before the rezoning comes back to us. But I think it is clear we need this type of housing somewhere in Cary. And the one phrase that sticks in my mind, what Ms. Ford mentioned early on tonight, if not here, where? That keeps echoing in my mind. But we have a lot of time before it comes back to us to vote, and we'll be thinking very, very thoroughly about this.
Other comments?
Just questions, I'll save comments for after questions. Management of the facility regarding the workforce component, obviously, and then selection criteria. Is that a town function or is that a Laurel Street function?
That'll be something that our development partners will also, they're going to operate and manage that, including the tenant selection and verification of income.
Okay. Is there any criteria that's going to more heavily weight existing Cary residents versus people that don't live in Cary or may not live in Wake County?
No, and my understanding of that is that there could be some fair housing issues related to restricting the tenant selection beyond income.
Okay, that's
And
fair
once
enough.
they move in, they live in Cary.
What's that?
Once they move, they're in
Once they're in, they're a
Cary.
Cary resident,
Cary.
right. Gotcha. That was the only other question I had. I had asked one of mine, so.
I don't have questions, I have comments, so if you wanted, did you have questions? Go ahead.
Well, I have one last question, I guess, and that had to do with, I think there was some comments about what's on site that contradicts some of the statements that were made. I found that a little bit, confusing, and maybe that's, again, part of communication, and we have sites that aren't updated. I don't know, but as this goes through the process, I'd kind of like that investigated and have an answer to, was the information just old, that reference to park? We have very forceful statements at the beginning of all this saying that no park is planned, and then you had some citizens speak about there's on our site things that say there is. So I'm just confused, and I'm sure others are confused. So just, as this goes through, let's make sure that gets addressed, just for clarification, unless you already have the answers. So.
Doug McRaney is here tonight, the director of our Parks and Recreation Department, and he would be happy to provide that further information.
He looks happy. He looks
now.
happy, yes.
Yeah.
He never looks happy.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. You want clarification that you're asking, Mr.
Yeah, I mean, we heard
Yeah.
two different stories, basically. So.
Well, Ms. Widmar, I thought, gave an excellent explanation as to the circumstances. Leading up to 2003, the town did an excellent job developing a series of use agreements with the schools. And because of that, because of the success of that, when we got in doing the 2003 plan, we wanted to be prepared for potential additional opportunities. So we developed these school concept plans. The operative word for that are concepts. They were conceptual. We never did develop any of those, just given all the varying priorities that we had with, as we developed the park system. And as we got to the 2012 plan, they were rolled over. And it was inadvertent. They weren't necessarily checked completely for whatever land use changes had happened. I would add that in the 2000, when the land was purchased in 2005 or 6 for the water tower, the deed actually says the water tower. So the town had made that decision. I would say, to all the citizens and anyone listening, one of the hallmarks of the town are our planning efforts, the quality of the plans, and yes, we do follow them. Another hallmark, though, is that they're not etched in stone. We shift and adjust as needed as priorities change in the town, and this is an example. And the last point I'd make is of this site, I view it as two parts. There's the school proper, and then there's the parcel in question, right? Our priority has always been the school portion of it. And in the packet, they even show a budgeted amount for East Cary. That was for the field portion. That has always been our priorities. That is what's lacking. To this day, we still talk about, the need. Ms. Robinson, you've talked about the need for additional fields. We would love to go in and make artificial turf fields, if we can get over some of our humps of other things we're working on. So I'm just saying, of that site, if we only had a limited budget, we would have worked on the school portion and not this parcel itself. So I hope, does that answer the questions at all? Yes, it was in the plan.
Yeah, that was very helpful.
It should have been pulled out. It was inadvertent, it was not. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll make some comments. First of all, I'll say that I empathize for the residents who anticipated a park being there. And Lori probably remembers this because she and I used to live in the same neighborhood. She's moved, I'm still there. And I bought a house next to 14 acres, and there was a sign that was 3 feet by 5 feet that said, future 14-acre town of Cary Park. So of course, I bought my house thinking I was buying a house adjacent to a park. I mean, what more would you want? And I was horrified when a land transaction occurred between the town and Wake County ended up taking the park and turning it into an elementary school. That was a perfect example of what Doug just talked about shifting and changing as needed. At that time, we were in dire need of elementary schools. And for anybody who's here in the 90s, you remember how terrible it was that we just couldn't find enough school sites. And so I was very disappointed about it not being a school. I mean, I can't even emphasize that strongly enough. I mean, not being a park. But, I recognized with some time that it was really probably better that it was a school, because we really did need a school. And so I do empathize with you, because it is hard when plans change, and especially if you weren't aware of the changing thought processes behind it, that you didn't evolve with the town as it was changing its opinion. So I want to say, first of all, I really do empathize with you. I do think that our priorities are constantly being pulled back and forth, and we want a lot of open space, and we want affordable housing. I mean, we're kind of at a crisis state right now with this, and it is definitely not a position that we want to be in, but we do feel like we need to do what we can to address affordability, just like we do what we can to address open space and parks requirements. I would make one recommendation to our staff, and this is an overarching recommendation. It is hard for us to know the tally of how much open space we have, how much parkland we have, how much private open space we have. Recently, I asked for that number. I don't think any of us could have rattled that off, but I asked for it recently from our staff, and this is what I learned. I learned that we have now 90 miles of greenway. We have 2,959 acres of land that has been protected as public open space. That equates to about 3.5 square miles. That's a lot. But not only that, many years ago, we started changing some of our policies. They were very innovative policies. And as a result, we started getting private open space being dedicated. And that means, like, when you have a site like this, the land doesn't go over to the town for ownership and maintenance. It's held by the owner of the site. And if this was a developer, if the town didn't own this site, this would be an example of private open space. We have 6,000 acres now of open space, private open space. We couldn't even calculate it back
in 1999. I mean, that's a lot of open space. Just in private open space, we have 8 square miles. So this is my recommendation to our staff. Whenever we get a project like this that adds, I don't know how many feet that is, add to the tally of how many linear feet of greenway we have, what this contributes to it. So when this project happens, what does it add to that? What does it add to our square footage or square acreage of private open space? And if there's a contribution for public open space, tell us that. Because it's going to help all of our citizens, and it's going to help us to be able to understand how we are whittling away at this problem. And the reason why I asked for this is because I was hearing so many people saying, everything's being cut down, Cary's not the community it used to be. No, we're not the community we used to be, because we're a very popular place. And everybody says, I move here, I don't want anybody else to come except for my mother, my sister, and my best friend from college. And everybody brings 3 families, and they bring 3 families, and so we're very popular. So no, we're not the same place. But on balance, we're doing a really good job protecting open space. And with that same attention that we've put into open space and parks, we also want to put some attention into affordable housing. And so this is one of those situations where I believe it's just going to prevail. This is the right site for this. It's close to transit, which we've done some affordable housing projects in the past that weren't close to transit, and I think that's unfair to the residents that live there to not have an option for transit. So it's close to a future transit route, it's close to a lot of jobs, and it's close to commercial, so I think it's very good. Now with that, I would say this council is known for holding our developers to very high standards, and when we are in joint partnership with the developer, that shouldn't be excused. And so I'm going to say a few things that you hear me say all the time that just get under my skin, and so I'm going to say it right now. 1,200 feet is not acceptable for children for a play space. That's smaller than this space here, way smaller than this room here. That's not okay. And I think that we should be changing our standards overall, but when we are in partnership with the applicant, we should definitely be changing our standard. There are opportunities to do different things than a big wet pond for stormwater retention. And we have the premier expert in stormwater management at NC State, Bill Smith. We should be leveraging him. When we're doing a project like this, we should be leveraging his expertise and our other experts. And if we took care of our stormwater in a different manner, we'd have more space for the play space. The comment, and man, this is a great paper. Was it Ms. King who wrote this, her assessment? That's an excellent assessment. There absolutely should be a more direct route over to the middle school. I'm a mom of 4 kids, and I can tell you they're never going to take that long circuitous walk. They're going to cut right through the woods, and if there's already a path, we already know what the kids prefer. So that should be a greenway going over there. And I'm glad to hear that our staff is going to be working to improve the stormwater and to make sure that we don't exacerbate the problem. So with all of that, on balance, I think this is a good project, and I think there is work to do to make it a great project.
Yeah, other comment?
So just a few comments. First, I know we've all said how great our staff is, and how amazing is it that our citizens who actually somewhat oppose this actually compliment staff on the work. So I would like to thank town staff for all their hard work and their diligence and perseverance and openness, because it's hard to get yelled at in a very tough situation and still remain calm and be able to be the kind of public servants that you are. And I'd like to thank the citizens. Your engagement has made this better. You pushed us to include, you're all talking about environmental. Where's the environmental stuff? You're all talking about, saving champion trees. We're saving the champion trees. I think that we're walking the walk, walking the talk. And I think I also want to thank the commissioners who may or may not be listening and the school board for partnering with us to help us make this a better project by adding more acreage, by allowing us to purchase the additional 2 acres that the school system had decided that they weren't going to use anymore. And this has taken 5 years. But 5 years is the way that things sometimes go in Cary. And that's because we're doing them the Cary way. We did a study. We hired experts. We did an RFP. We're using data-driven decisions. We're partnering with or at least U.S. renowned partners, and we're doing it in full transparency. And on a personal note, I am the product of affordable housing. If you're wondering what that looks like, that's me. My mother found herself at the age of 29, single parent with 2 kids, working 2 to 3 jobs. And if it hadn't been for subsidized housing, who knows where I would have been. So as stressful as it is as a single parent, and I don't know what that experience is like, but I know there's got to be some out there, having to worry about housing and food and how you're going to manage it all leaves you little time to parent. And so having a roof over your head has to be difficult, if not impossible today. It's said that it takes a village to raise a child, and in this case, it takes the town of Cary. This project is made better by everyone's participation. And I think as we move forward, the merits definitely are there. They outweigh so many of the potential negatives. We couldn't have picked a better place, a place that's next to 3 schools, within a tenth of a mile to one park, a quarter mile to another park, and half a mile to another, a greenway that goes all the way to downtown, right on the BRT, next to shopping and grocery. So many affordable housing components are in food deserts. This one is not. Keeping housing diversity as an option for us actually helps those of us who are already there. And the reason is by having an socioeconomic diversity, we no longer have to bus kids. Our kids don't have to stay on the bus to align with Wake County's goal of socioeconomic diversity. The environmental impacts, I understand losing trees is hard. But having people able to live in our community is harder. 2 years ago, we called the people that will live in this community essential workers. They put their lives on the line so that we could continue to live our lives. Firefighters, police, teachers, people who stocked our shelves, they put their lives on the line for us. I think it's just an opportunity for us to offer opportunity for them to stay in Cary.
That's, well, save the best for last because it's your district.
Go ahead, y'all saying everything I was going to say, so cool.
No.
Yeah, and I want to commend Lori's leadership in this initiative in identifying the site. You spent countless hours working with our staff, coming up with the site, the plan, and a lot of details, a lot of efforts that went into this. Really appreciate your leadership in this. And I asked you, what made you want to run for council? And this is an issue that's really close and near and dear to your heart. And I want to, say our thanks. And you bring the staff on board with you. You bring the council on board with you. Really appreciate it. And I agree with Jennifer. You said we don't lower our standards when we are the applicant. We want to show the developers that, what do we expect from them from future developments. That's why we are adding a lot of environmental concepts into this plan. Solars, that's great. Hopefully we'll make it happen, not just for the common areas, right? We are adding for all units. Okay, so take note on that. Got it. So, and electric vehicle charging stations, and don't forget that. And greater open space, I'm fully supportive of that. So we want to make a project that the town feels, and our citizens feel really proud of. I know we've heard some comments from the neighboring communities. They are concerned. We want to incorporate those concerns and make the project better, make them like the project. So thank you for your efforts.
Yeah, I'm not going to repeat anything that's been said. Wonderful comments from everyone, and I echo those. I think, you know, what we hate up here is to be Solomons, where we have to be the ones that have to make a decision where, you know, there's like a winner and a loser. I think after you've listened to all these comments tonight, and as this goes through, I think we have a real opportunity here that we can just have something that's for the greater good of Cary. It's going to be something that will address a lot of those concerns, maybe not all of them. But, you know, when I was listening to the concerns about the environment, I think, Jennifer, sharing that data, that's the kind of communications we have to get out there. Because, again, we hear so many, we heard it tonight, all these statistics about losing land. And the reality is, I think, and we're trying to confirm this right now, we're the only community in the county that's growing our canopy. And I'll say that again, growing the canopy. That means that we're investing in trees, we're investing in other areas where, you know, all of that data that you shared, I'm not going to say it all over again. But just because one area goes away, and all of a sudden you hear the hue and cry that these 7 acres have lost a certain amount of vegetation, look at our downtown park. You know, not only are we planting several hundred trees, but we're planting 65,000 native species plants. This is what we do in Cary. The environment is improving and growing. That doesn't mean we have to stop the development. Now, the reality is we're down to 15%, and there's not that much left. So, but the point is, I think this can be a win on both concerns. You know, we have an issue with affordable housing, and frankly, I heard the one person say it's like a grain of sand. Well, you know what? You got to start somewhere, and I think it's more than a grain of sand, because I think another citizen said it's like the first drop in the pail. Well, I think it's bigger than a grain of sand. I think it's a big drop. And it's also indicative of the things that we're trying to do in Cary to do our part to be socially responsible in this area. But we're not going to do it at the compromise of the environment, and we're sure heck not going to do it, you know, to compromise the stormwater. That's why it's so important to get that information out. And I'll give you a little tidbit. My first no vote on this council was against my parish, the church, and I voted against Barnes and Noble because we weren't addressing the stormwater. And guess what? Years later, all of the citizens in Cary, had to fix that stormwater problem that was impacting Pirates Cove because we didn't do the job back then in the 80s that we should have done. We've learned from that. We're better at that, and we are getting ahead of the game on the Walnut Creek. So I think this is going to be a win-win. I think it's going to go through, and I think we all, and all of you out there, are going to be proud both of how we've protected the environment and how we've stepped up to the challenge of affordable housing. Thank you.
And I just have one minor comment and maybe clarification. So I think for every development, we almost encounter this problem a lot that, you know, there are some champion trees on the site. Is there possible, you know, forgive me if this sound very ignorant, like, is there a way that we can move the champion trees to other locations if it does?
Oh,
okay.
God, no.
You know,
But we can plant.
They usually die. They're too big.
Okay.
But we can plant more.
Yeah.
I too would want to echo everybody's thanks of everyone that came out and participated in this public hearing tonight. I want to thank those that came out to, you know, support their community being more inclusive and accepting and willing to help others. And I also want to thank those that came out with concerns about their neighborhood and wanting to protect it and fight for it and make sure something negative didn't happen to it. And I don't think either one of those are mutually exclusive of one another, you know? I think we can do both. There's been a lot of public input during this process. I think as Ms. Bush said, this has been going on for a long time. I know our staff has gotten to know a number of folks very well, and they haven't been shy. But the reality is, whether you like the project or not, or support the project or not, you've made it a better project. Started out a lot taller, building's a lot closer to the neighborhood. A lot of changes have been made. It's become more environmentally friendly, as we've heard. But the one theme that I heard time and time and time again through all of this from the existing residents, one of the major concerns is traffic. And I know that we have committed to explore or investigate road improvements to calm traffic, but I don't think that's good enough. You know, I think we can do better than explore or investigate. I think we can actually make real tangible traffic improvements to not only address the traffic that will be created by this project, but the existing traffic problem that exists in the neighborhood, and especially on Ryan Road today. I can't tell you how many times, probably in the last 10, 15 years, I have either called Cary Police Department or town staff or whoever to get a cop on the side of the street, running radar, speed sentry device, data, whatever. And the problem never goes away. It just continues and continues to occur. It's an existing problem. Now, I'm not stupid enough to think that we're going to solve the problem, but we can darn sure make a positive impact in it. So I think that needs to be something that we commit to as this goes forward. I think it was pretty much said, but this is a values decision. And can the town build a park here? Sure. Can we do nothing and just leave it undisturbed? Absolutely. Or do we take advantage of an opportunity to possibly give 60 families a chance, or that live and work in Cary, the chance to live in Cary, or that work in Cary to live in Cary? It's a values decision. I think we've done great in parks and a lot of things throughout town. One thing that we're really struggling with these days is housing affordability. So it comes down to values. To Ed's question about 65 feet versus 55, yeah, it sounds a little tall for 4 stories, but not if you're trying to make a visually appealing building. Not if you're trying to hide HVAC stuff on the roof. Not if you're trying to use a more quality of architecture. I didn't hear it a lot tonight, but one concern that's been expressed to me time and time again, especially for the last few months, is Ryan Springs. Ryan Springs. You don't like looking at Ryan Springs. Ryan Springs is kind of maybe why you don't want to build it at 55 feet. Maybe you do a little taller, a little better materials, a little more attention to detail. Because the reality is this is Cary's first project of something like this. If we get it wrong, we're probably not going to do another one. The community's not going to have it. If we get it right, it could be the beginning of more to come in other areas of town. So, I also heard comment, why aren't we requiring the developers to provide the affordable housing? We would love to. But there's this little problem down on Jones Street in Raleigh that won't let us. Every time the town of Cary tries to do something that we think is in the best interest of our community or our citizens or what we're hearing from our citizens, and we try to go do that, they smack our hand and tell us, bad Cary, you can't do that. And they pass a new law and say, well, we can't. And then they punish the other however many towns throughout the state so they don't do something we did too. So if you'd like to see us, possibly be able to do something like inclusionary zoning or require a certain percentage of new development to be affordable, we kind of need your and probably the rest of the state's help come November. We do, however, try to use what influence we have. Sometimes we have some with the development community to try to meet our community's goals. And that's led to, I think, about 30 units of affordable housing included in new development that's been approved. and we're going to continue to try to do a lot more. As Ms. Robinson also said earlier, you know, we are one of the most desirable places to live in America. Everybody wants to come here. People that are here, they don't want to leave. One thing we learned with the census and actually going through the Cary housing plan and learning more about our demographics, 25% of Cary right now are school-age children. 25%. So even if we could wall off the town or put a bubble over it or whatever, not let anybody else in new, we're going to need very soon more housing for 25% of our population that is currently at about 180,000 people. We need people to serve that population. Those are going to become service workers. Those, as Ms. Bush spoke about earlier, you know, some of our, you know, service workers, teachers, firefighters, first responders, nurses, retiring seniors, our students out of college, and so on. And to Mr. Smith's point, Jay, I totally agree. I don't care if it's a grain of sand or a dirt clod or whatever, it's a start. So, I'll leave it at that. I'm sure we're going to talk more about this in the future as this comes back to us for a decision. I want us to see us do better in regards to traffic on this one. I think that would help alleviate a lot of concerns in the community. Yeah, thank you.
Other comments? All right, very good. Again, thank you for coming out and letting us know your thoughts and ideas, and please know that this isn't the end of your input. If you have further input, please let us know. There are a lot of opportunities for you to provide further input. This will go to our Planning and Zoning Board. They will address it in a month or two, and we will see it in a month or two after that. Thanks, everyone.
We had another one that recently.
So there are no discussion items this evening, and there is no other business, so I declare this meeting adjourned.
This has been a production of Cary TV. Visit the Town of Cary's website at townofcary.org.